In this video, we're going to look at some basic transactions with money coming into the business. This time we're going to have a look at the GST implications. So on August 9, we received some service income of 2,200 GST inclusive. Alright, so what I like to do when we have a transaction involving GST is to figure out the accounts affected first. So services income received, that's going to be one account. So that's going to be under our revenues account, this service fees revenue. But we'll just call this services income. The next account that's going to be affected that we know is going to be cash at bank because we received this amount of money. So I'm going to put this last, cash at bank. Now, the last account that's going to be affected is our GST account. Now, because we've collected money, we've collected a GST component on behalf of the government. So we actually owe the government some GST. So over here, this GST collected account, which is a liability, that's the last account affected. So GST collected. Now we can go ahead and fill out the rest of the information. So services income, we know that that's an income account, which is a credit by nature. So income, credit by nature, it's gone up, so it's increased, it's going to stay a credit. Now the amount we have to put out the X GST amount. So if I break up this 2,200, $200 of that is GST, 2,000 of it, that's the X amount. So I know that my services income account, that's going to be the XGST amount, which is 2,000. The GST collected. Now GST collected is a liability, so I'm going to put a liability in there. Liabilities by nature are credits. Our liability account has gone up. It's going to stay a credit for the GST component, which is $200. The last account affected is our cash at bank, which is an asset. Assets, we know, are debit by nature. We've received this money, so our bank account has gone up. So this is going to stay as a debit. How much have we received? We received 2,200. We can do a quick check now. We know that our debit amount of 2,200 equals our two credits. When they're added together, that will equal 2,200. Let's look at this next transaction now. On August 10, we invoiced 5,500 GST inclusive for services rendered to P. Smith. So we invoiced this guy, P. Smith, $5,500. We haven't actually collected the money yet. So the first step here, what I would do is I would think about the three accounts affected. Firstly, we know if we've invoiced 5,500 for some services, that's going to be some sort of services income account. So let's put in the date, August 10. Let's call this services income. We now know when we sell or when we perform some services that there's GST applicable here. So the GST account affected is going to be this GST collected. GST collected. The final account affected is not cash at bank because we haven't actually received this money. So we're going to call that accounts receivable, which is an asset account. So sometime in the future we're going to receive that money, but we haven't received it yet. So we'll just call that accounts receivable. Let's, before we fill out the rest of it, break up this into its GST components. So 5,500 total. If I divide that by 11, I'll get $500. That's the GST component. Therefore, the ex-GST amount would be $5,000. All right, we now have all the information we need to fill out the rest of this transaction table. Services income, we know is a revenue account, so we're going to put R for revenue, or we can put income, it doesn't matter. Nature of revenue accounts, they're credit by nature. Our services income is increasing, so it's going to stay a credit. We have to put our ex-GST amount in here, which is $5,000. GST collected is a liability account. Liabilities are credit by nature. It is increased. It's going to stay a credit for $500 GST component. The final account, accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is an asset account from our accounting rules. Assets are debit by nature. Our accounts receivable account has gone up. We're now owed $5,500. So that stays a debit of $5,500. You can see here the two credits equal this debit amount.